Episode 22, How to Achieve Successful Results Faster with What You Learned from Podcasts.
Teaching, helping, and inspiring you for personal improvement, productivity increase, and business success with results-based strategies and action steps. And now, here's your host for the Happy Abundant Freedom Podcast, Angela Lynn.
Hey, it's Angela Lynn, and welcome to episode 22 of the Happy Abundant Freedom Podcast. 22 is an awesome number because it's my favorite number is 2, and then so that twice. Fantastic. Anyways, so today we're going to be talking about how you can actually take all that information that you learned in the podcast episodes that you've seen, whether it's this podcast or in other people's podcasts, how you can ensure that you take the strategies and implement those in your life, because it's one thing to learn a lot of information, but if you don't do anything with that information and actually try and implement the best strategies and the things that you heard or watched in those episodes, then you're simply not going to have different results in your life. Fact of the matter is, if you don't take action, nothing's going to change. So my goal is to make sure that you improve your productivity, improve your personal development, and also business success. So that's why I want to make sure that you're taking action as you're learning the information. So the reason why I bring up this topic is because a lot of times we'll go through the podcast, and because the podcasters are focused on giving you the best information, so they might cover a lot of great strategies. And then at the end of the episode, you might get overwhelmed with, oh, wow, there's all these strategies, and I can't seem to remember them all. Or, wow, there's all these strategies, not really sure what to do with them. So in this episode, I want to cover how you can deal with that information overload and to really prioritize and to actually implement those strategies that they talk about in your life much faster and much easier. If the podcast that you're listening to already has an action step where the podcaster at the end or perhaps in the middle, they might say action item or action steps that you need to take, and maybe they list it out in their show notes. That's fantastic. In that case, you can simply take whatever they told you to do in terms of the action and then just go do that. But even then, I find that sometimes they might cover information in the episode, which is really great information, but they don't actually include it in the action steps. And then so you miss out on that strategy that you would have allowed you to reach great success if you were to implement it. So what I do is, because I believe in the fact that unfortunately, I can't remember everything in terms of what I should do once I listen to a podcast. So what I do is, as I'm going through the podcast episode, I'll listen, or watch, and once I hear a great strategy that I think, okay, you know what, I heard this great strategy, I know how I should implement it in my life, or whether it's personal life or business, I know what to do now. And then, oh wait, now he's going on to some other information, or he or she's talking about this other thing now. Oh crap, alright, guess I'll pay attention to that, and then you forget about the action. So what I do is, I usually listen to it on my iPad. So if you have an iPad or iPhone, don't worry, I'm going to show you. But if you have a BlackBerry or your or other phones, or if you're paying attention to podcasts on your computer, I'm going to discuss how you can deal with all those on your various devices. So let's start out with iPad and iPhone. So let's say you're listening or watching a podcast and you're going through it, it's great. And then as you go through it, you hear a great strategy. Then what I want you to do is I want you to just exit the podcast and then go over to notes. And then the reason why I want you to go over to notes is because of the fact that once you type in what action that you have to take, then you can email it. So once you type in what action you have to take, you can again go back to the podcast. All right, let's say, okay, Angela told me to to type down using your habit and doing them daily, consistently by calendaring them. All right, great. Type that in. All right, and then now you can go back to your podcast, continue listening, or watching, and then when you hear another great strategy or action item, then you can go back to your notes and then just continue on. And then at the end of this podcast episode that you're paying attention to, then you have a list of action items, action steps that you can take. And the reason why I tell you to put it in notes as opposed to reminders or tasks is because with notes, you have the ability to email them. So I think it's quite important for you to be able to email it, because depending on what topic you're learning from, perhaps there's a couple of things that might be included in your action steps. One might be you might have to contact some people with this new information that you learned. And so you might email them or you might call them. So what you can do is once you get an email copy of your action steps, then you can allocate it. So perhaps these particular action steps, I need to email some people about that. And then you can simply copy and paste that information into whatever message that you need to talk to them about. So that's what you can do with those ones. And then the other ones that's left, perhaps you need to put them in your calendar. Okay, now great. And then so you would schedule that in your calendar. And then, all right, so that might be done. That might be a portion of that action item. And then as you're going through this, then you can simply essentially delete whatever action steps once you're done dealing with them. So perhaps emailing people. All right, great. You put that in the message already. Okay, delete that. You calendared this thing that you have to do. All right, great. You can delete that off your action steps email. And for the rest that's remaining that you have to do, essentially take those, and because currently you probably have a lot of things going on already, a lot of tasks that you need to get to. So I want you to take that list of action steps that you just learned from this episode, and then compare that to the list of actions that you have to do, and then see and prioritize your podcast episode list with the list that you currently have already. So you can take, okay, you know what, this first action step from the podcast episode, it's really important. I really need to get to it. So I'm going to put it on in front of my other tasks that I already have. All right, this next action step from the podcast episode, you know what, it's not as important, so maybe I'll put that, when should I do that? All right, maybe I should do it 3 days from now. All right, I'll put that on my to-do list then. So you would go through your action steps and then make sure you allocate it out in terms of priority and also when you're going to do those. Then you can delete those action steps as required. So this is a great way that will really help you take that information that you learned from the podcast and make sure you actually take action with it. Now, if you have a BlackBerry, and BlackBerry, because a lot of their market are business professionals, so they have this fantastic feature at the email. So what you do is, if you have a BlackBerry, just create a new email to yourself, and then just, again, start typing in the action steps that you need to take as you're going through the podcast, all right? If you hear a great strategy, just stop the podcast, then go to your email and then type it out. And then at the end of the podcast, you can essentially just email this to yourself. And if you're on Androids or other phones, again, just simply write an email out to yourself. And if you are on a computer, then what you do is you can create a document, whether you're on the Mac or a PC, just create a document for yourself and then type out all those action items that you have to take as you're going through the episode. And then once you're done the episode, do the exact same thing. See who you have to email to reach out to, and then email out to those people, and then see what you need to put in your calendar from these action steps. And then the remaining, how you can prioritize them with the to-do list that you already have right now. And then do that, and then you can start deleting things off your action steps. And one of the things that I also found is really important is as you're emailing these episode show notes or action steps, what you can do is in the subject put down which episode, so what's the episode name, and also actually start out with the podcast, what's the name of the podcast, because that'll be easier for you to find later on. So for example, if I was listening in to Happy Abundant Freedom podcast, I would go Happy Abundant Freedom, and then the podcast, the episode name, so I would put that in, and then that would be my subject in my email. And the useful part of this is that later on, perhaps you're trying to get all the action steps from your from the podcast, a certain podcast, then you can just type in like Happy Abundant Freedom podcast, and then it'll pull up all of your action steps that you require from this podcast. And then the other thing too is because let's say you're going through your action steps and you sort of remember what you should be doing, but you still want you need a little bit of a refresher. That way, when you're looking at the subject, you know, okay, all right, this one I got from this podcast, from this episode. I'll just go back to it and review it. And so this is a great way for you to help refresh your memory in terms of how to implement that strategy best in your life. So I hope that helps. So the action steps are for you to as you're going through the episode, once you hear a great strategy or a great action step, stop that episode, go to your notes. If you're on your iPad or iPhone, go to your email if you're on a BlackBerry or Android or other smartphone, and also just go to a document if you're on a Mac or a PC, and then just type out what action step that you have to do, and then go back to the episode again, and then listen to that. And forgot. If you're nowhere close to any of these things, which I'm not sure how, but because most people have their phones with them at least. So at least, you know what, take a pen and a paper, just write down what action steps that you have to take. All right, sorry about that. So write down your action steps as you're going through your podcast episodes. And then once you're done that, then send that as an email to yourself. And in the subject line, make sure you put the podcast name. So for example, Happy Abundant Freedom Podcast, and then the episode title so that you can trace it later easier if you need a refresher. And then once you have that in your email, go check that email and go through each of those actions before you go into another episode. And then go through these actions, see who you have to contact, see what you have to put in your calendar, and also prioritize that action step list, and then so that you deal with all of them first. And then you can start deleting things off this email list, and then you can move on to another episode. From there, then you can do the exact same thing. So for this episode's show notes, which will include the transcripts and also the action steps, as well as resources that will really help you learn much faster and learn much easier, because I find it quite important to take what we learn and put it into our lives as soon as possible, so that you can see results as soon as possible. So I'm going to share some resources with you that will allow you to learn faster and implement it in your life much easier and much faster. And then you also get the audio and video download of this podcast episode. You can get all of those at www.happyabundantfreedom.com/EP22. All right. And so you can go there, and what I want you to do is also post in the comments as to what you found, what your thoughts are on this strategy. And also, if you have any comments as to sort of what additional tips that you might have for how you can take the information that you learn from podcasts and actually implement it in your life much easier, much faster. I'm always looking for tips that you have so that I can share it with other people, and then that way together we can all be more successful. So please post that in the comment section at that page at www.happyabundantfreedom.com/EP22. In the next episode, we're going to be discussing how you can take the information that you learned from seminars, workshops, conferences, and make sure that you actually, again, implement those strategies in your life. I know that oftentimes at seminars, workshops, or conferences, you get a lot of information. And the difference with that and a podcast is that because the workshop and seminar and conference is going on, so you can't really pause and say, hey, all right, everybody, wait, stop the seminar, conference, workshop right now because I have to go to my iPad, iPhone, BlackBerry, smartphone, computer, whatever, and type this down. They're not going to do that. So I'm going to show you some strategies that will help you ensure that you still take down all the action steps that you need to take, and make sure you get those down so that you can implement the information that you learned from your seminar or conference or workshop much faster and much easier in your life. So that's in the next episode. But thank you so much for watching and listening in. And in the meantime, I really hope that you're going to create more happiness, abundance, and freedom in your life and your community. If you enjoyed this episode, would you please give me a review or a rating on iTunes? This keeps me motivated to produce even better content for you when I can see how I've helped you through this episode or through this podcast. So you can do so by going to www.happyabundantfreedom.com/iTunes. And I want to thank you so much in advance for doing that.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to get our latest strategies on personal improvement, productivity, and business success automatically, make sure to subscribe to our iTunes podcast and get our special training worth $67 for free at happyabundantfreedom.com/iTunes audio for the audio podcast, or happyabundantfreedom.com/iTunes video for the video podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please tell a friend about us to help them achieve personal and business success. Now, as a special thank you gift for tuning in to this episode, I want to give you my 7 secrets to increase focus and productivity for personal and business success. This is my ebook that's worth $67, and I'm going to give it to you for free, along with my free email newsletter on personal development, productivity, and business success. So you can get this ebook for free along with my latest strategies by going to www.happyabundantfreedom.com/gift. Now, until I connect with you via my email newsletter, here's to you creating more happiness, abundance, and freedom in your life and your community. Thank you for tuning in.